Hey Toy fans, D21 Beast Rob here, back with another vlog for you guys here today, and I wanted to kind of share my thoughts on Batman v Superman. I just saw the movie today, and I've got some mixed emotions about the film, but I think I'm going to go ahead and start with the non-spoiler elements of the movie, and it's going to be hard for me to keep discussing the film, I guess, without getting too far into spoilers, so I'll give some light details up front, and then I'll warn you when the actual spoiler content is coming. To start with, I feel like the movie was a bit all over the place. I don't think it was a horrible bomb like a lot of people are saying. I do feel like it's a movie that if you're a comic book fan, you want to go check out because there's some nice callbacks to the comics, and there's some great characterization from a lot of the characters in the movie, just not all of them. If we start by just going through the cast, I think Amy Adams did a great job for what little she had. I think she did a great job as Lois Lane. I appreciated the more screen time that Laurence Fishburne got as Perry White. He didn't do a lot more than he did in Man of Steel, but I certainly got more of the editor-in-chief vibe from him for the Daily Planet this time around. I like Jeremy Irons in pretty much everything he does. In this film, he played Alfred, as you know, but I honestly didn't get the Alfred vibe from him. Now, Irons was great as sort of a mentor figure for Bruce Wayne in this movie, and he even kind of served a bit of a Lucius Fox vibe. He was inventing, or at least making upgrades to Batman's voice changer at one point, and he was definitely the mechanic for the Batmobile. And I don't typically see Alfred fulfilling that role in the comics, but I don't read a lot of Batman, so don't shoot me right away. But I definitely got sort of the Lucius Fox / Alfred vibe from him, and for what he had, I thought he was just fine. There was a lot of controversy around Jesse Eisenberg being cast as Lex Luthor, and for the most part, I actually enjoyed his take on the character. Very, very different from what we've seen before, and I don't think he's the quintessential Lex Luthor. I think that still goes to Michael Rosenbaum, but for the strange sort of take that they gave the character, I enjoyed it for the most part. The nitpicks I've got with him, I'll talk about in spoilers in just a moment. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I neither liked nor disliked her in the role. She looked fine during the action sequences, and even when she was all dolled up for the party sequences through the early parts of the film, I thought she was fine in that role too. I don't know that she did a lot that she could have failed at, so for those worried that a supermodel was playing a major DC character, I guess your fears are kind of quelled for the moment, or no reason to worry on that front, I guess is what I should say. Diane Lane's back as Martha Kent, and, you know, she did about as much as she did in the first film, maybe actually less a little bit. She was still kind of a character of heart and soul for Clark to kind of give his feelings to, and she was fine doing just that. Then we had Holly Hunter as a Kentucky senator, and I don't know that she really added or took anything away from the movie per se, but for what she was in the movie, she was fine too. Then we have Superman. Superman's a character, like in Man of Steel, Henry Cavill was a fine Superman. He didn't per se outact Christopher Reeve. I thought he might have been better than Brandon Routh. And it's unfair to compare him to Tom Welling when Tom Welling was really kind of more of a Clark Kent character than he was a Superman character, but Henry Cavill was fine in the role, and I actually found myself sympathizing with him quite a bit through this film, and that's mostly because of Batman. Ben Affleck honestly brings it as Bruce Wayne, but I feel like through most of this film, he's very much a bully more than he is a superhero, and I'll discuss that a little bit more when I get into spoilers. But I felt like Ben Affleck was, you know, he's a great actor. There's no arguing that. Through all the films that we've seen him do, especially recently, he's been really good. I never had a problem with his casting, but I just feel like he brought it to this role, but the role wasn't really the best role for Batman, or wasn't the best written Batman role that I'd seen in cinema, and I don't think that Ben Affleck is my definitive Batman by a mile. So kind of disappointed to come out of this movie saying that. I saw a lot of people saying Ben Affleck was, you know, the definitive Batman. Honestly, I thought he was kind of hyper-violent. I thought he was genuinely crazy. You always hear that Bruce Wayne in the comics is somebody who's more Batman than he is Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne's his public face, and he's genuinely psychotic. Well, I guess they took that to heart in this film, because I actually found myself having a hard time even really relating to the character. I thought he was just mostly nuts, didn't really care about collateral damage, didn't care about who he hurt to get his mission complete, and he was just a character I found really, really hard to root for. So I'm a bit disappointed to be able to say that coming out of the movie. There's been a lot of talk about how this movie's too long. It's 2.5 hours, maybe a little bit more than that. And while I do feel like the film was really long, and they definitely could have cut out some content, especially some universe-building elements that kind of relate to future DC Universe movies, I don't know that I felt myself, you know, checking my watch constantly or getting bored during watching the movie. So I was happy to be able to sit down, watch the entire thing, and not feel like I'd been there forever. Next, let's talk about the score. As in most films, main characters in the film each have their own score that plays when they show up on camera, and I loved Superman's, which I actually really enjoyed from Man of Steel. It's one of the few things about that movie I really did enjoy, and it was nice to hear that sort of slow, melodic piano playing every time Clark Kent or Superman was on screen. Really, it was just a treat to the ears to hear that pop up. But with Batman, with Wonder Woman, with Lex Luthor, I never really got into the music of those characters, and I'm kind of disappointed by that. That may go back to the fact that I didn't really care for Batman's characterization, that I felt like Wonder Woman didn't add a lot to the film, and Lex Luthor's music was in the same way that I guess Heath Ledger's Joker's music was just kind of strange sounds. When Lex Luthor was on screen, all I really remember from his music was just strange piano keys or nothing that really brings weight, I guess, to his character. Maybe I was mishearing things, but that's just kind of how I felt coming out of the movie. And finally, let's just talk about the film as a complete whole. I do feel like the film started off pretty interestingly. We saw some backstory really for Batman and Superman without getting too spoilery. And then we do see some elements addressed from Man of Steel that a lot of people had complaints with. And then after that point, we're probably talking about maybe 30 minutes in, the film kind of just starts on its own journey. It's a film that I was able to stick with pretty well. And if you're a comic book fan, I think there's a lot there for you to enjoy. If you're a casual fan of superhero films or just casual moviegoer in general, I think you can enjoy and have a good time with this film. But I do have to warn you, when I talk about Batman being brutal, and there's some other elements in this movie, despite the fact that we're getting cereals and fruit snacks and toys and all sorts of things aimed at children, this film is not for your kids. I've got a 4-year-old myself. He's not going to be seeing this movie for a while. If you've got a kid who's closer to 13, they'll be fine with this film. But really, for the younger children, this is not their flick. Let them keep watching the Lego DC superhero films if they really want to get their Batman and Superman fix. So that was a bit of a disappointment for me. I wanted to be able to see this film again and take my kid, but I guess I'll be saving that for Civil War, at least for now. Overall, is this movie a must-see for people? Well, I think it's definitely one you guys want to check out. I mean, it's significant as far as DC building its cinematic universe, but I don't know that you have to go see it in theaters, and I certainly wouldn't see it in 3D. There's way too much of this film shot at night, and at least from my personal experience, once you put those films over your eyes, any film with a lot of nighttime scenes becomes very aggravating to watch in a dark theater. So definitely wait till it's at home. You could choose to rent it or maybe even buy the movie once it goes on sale, but this is not a film that you need to pay full price for because honestly, if you're like me, you're probably not going to want to watch it more than once for curiosity's sake. Much like with the film Man of Steel, I watched it one time, I bought it on Blu-ray, I watched it one more, and I really didn't need to see it again. So definitely wait till you can find this film on sale or cheaper. Okay, so that's it for the non-spoiler section of the video. Go ahead and stop here if you haven't seen the Batman film yet, but if you have, stick with me here because I'm going to share my thoughts on some of the more spoilery elements of this movie. The first thing I want to mention is that Batman is flat out a bully in this film. He is just relentless. He sends people to the hospital, he flips over cars and then drags them with a tow cable from the Batmobile. He shoots people with various weapons. He's breaking bones. I mean, he's killing people flat out at some points in this film. And while it may be fun to see him crack down on faceless villains from time to time, heck, I even do it in the Arkham games when I play them and enjoy it, in the film, it really was just very visceral. I mean, Zack Snyder loves his violence that he brings to films. He's very good at choreographing that stuff. Not so great on storytelling, but he knows how to do a great action scene. But this Batman was just completely vicious. I mean, I was sitting back in my seat just kind of wincing it a few times. Kind of like when I watched Man of Steel the first time around, all the collateral damage, yeah, you expect that with Superman, but as the film kept going, more and more stuff kept getting destroyed, and I was just like, geez, when is this going to end? And as I was watching Batman v Superman, Batman is just bludgeoning these guys on his way to getting his mission done, and at some point I'm just kind of like, okay, wait, he's got to stop and take a breath. I mean, this guy is literally psychotic in the film. When it comes to DC's big two, I typically root for Batman. I find Superman kind of unrelatable, but in this movie, Batman was just kicking Superman when he was down, both physically and metaphorically, and I really found myself championing and rooting for Superman to come out of this thing and hopefully come out alive. So it's just kind of disappointing to me that that's how the film chose to portray the character. Now, it's nothing against Ben Affleck. I think he acted the role exactly as it was written, and he did a darn good job of it, but it's kind of like when I read Civil War, and Iron Man turned out to be the bad guy. I was a huge Iron Man fan up to that point, but it was just the way he was written throughout Civil War. The guy was a selfish prick, and it came across on the page, and I felt the same way watching this movie. I really wanted to like Batman, but there was no reason for me to like him. He was just relentless and frankly chaotic and evil. But Batman wasn't the only one who suffered from some mischaracterization. There was also Lex Luthor. Now, like I said, Lex Luthor was a big pill to swallow when he first showed up on screen, but I actually kind of liked it as the movie progressed. It was a nice, interesting sort of new take on the character. And like I said in my non-spoilers, not my definitive edition of Lex. That still goes to Rosenbaum, but I think Jesse Eisenberg brought a mostly great performance. My biggest problem with his was the only time that he really seemed crazy to me was actually at the dinner party that you've seen in the trailers, and he gives kind of a speech, and he starts having this twitch in his face, and he's almost got a speech, I guess, that he tried to rehearse that he couldn't remember the words to, and he's stopping himself and talking to himself and trying to start again in front of a massive group of, Metropolis and Gotham elite. So it was just really strange to see that be the one point, his public face, when he kind of went all nuts, I guess. And I don't think that was a show for the public. I think that was just how the character was poorly written for that particular scene. But I did find him quite menacing, especially in the plot. And remember, we're on spoilers here, especially in the plot where he actually captured Superman's mom. When he gave Superman the photos of his mother, basically bound up and captured and said, "Go fight Batman," I thought that was one of the best moments for that character in the movie. I just sat back thinking, wow, he went there. I mean, it was intense, and I felt bad for Superman at the time, and I wanted him to just be able to knock Lex off the building right there, but he couldn't. He had to go face Batman, which leads to a bit of a problem we had with their face-off. I don't like that Batman and Superman were so easily manipulated into fighting these guys. Batman's always portrayed as sort of a hyper-intelligent character, whether it be comics or TV shows or movies, and I feel like he was just duped a little bit too easily by Lex Luthor in this film, and Superman too. He's no slouch in the intelligence department either, but it just seemed too easy for those two guys to get together. And part of Batman being a big bully is once Superman goes in to take on armored Batman, as he's got the bat signal turned on, which, by the way, he waited a long time at that signal being turned on before anything actually happened between those two. But once he comes in, he doesn't even say, "Hold on, wait. We've been manipulated and Lex Luthor is doing all this evil." Batman just starts firing on him, and Superman's just like, "Screw it, I'm going to fight you because that's what Lex wants me to do." So I wish it didn't start that way. Then we get the scenes of Batman firing kryptonite gas grenades at Superman, weakening him, kicking him when he's down, and then Superman's basically just being beat up on the rest of the fight. And really, this film actually makes it look like Batman would have actually killed Superman if not for the intervention of Lois Lane. And I don't know how I feel about that. I kind of wish they would have just ended in a draw. But the end of that fight leads into another problem I have with the movie. Again, a character just doing nothing, basically. Once Batman and Superman figure out that they've been duped, Superman told Batman that Martha Kent needs to be saved, and Batman goes off in his Batwing, and he ends up taking out a bunch of guys in a building. The first time in the film up to this point that Batman's done something truly heroic, and even then he's still savagely brutal with how he handles the situation. Why didn't Superman immediately zip off to save his mom at that point? There was a ticking clock, and we wait for Batman to infiltrate a building on the second story, beat up 14 guys, get up to the next floor, get into a room, shoot a guy's flamethrower tank, and then cover Martha Kent with his cape. And I've watched 10 seasons of Smallville, people, he recovers from kryptonite pretty quickly once it's out of the picture. He could have zipped in there, saved his mom long before the timer ever went off, and still gone back to face Lex Luthor. I don't know that we got a good explanation for why that didn't take place, other than to give Batman a chance to finally be heroic in the movie. So I wish that would have been done a little bit differently, and it disappointed me that things went down that way. Also, I feel like I had a little bit of a home field advantage watching this movie. I don't know that the cast ever referred to Wonder Woman as Wonder Woman, and there may have been one time where an extra shouted the name Princess Diana. She was never named, but thankfully I knew that this was Wonder Woman in the film, both in her civilian guise and in her actual costume guise. And I think the film could have done a lot more to explain who that character was and her relationship to Batman and Superman in this film. There was a nice sort of playful tease between Bruce and Wonder Woman earlier in the film when Bruce was trying to steal some encrypted information from Lex's databanks, but really we didn't get a lot of who this character was or why she was important. And since they were introduced, let's go ahead and talk about some other Justice Leaguers. This film, of course, introduces Aquaman, Flash, Cyborg, and of course the aforementioned Wonder Woman. Now with Aquaman, I thought there was a huge missed opportunity to show this character early in the film. There's actually, near the opening of the movie, we see some wreckage from the battle in the Indian Ocean from Man of Steel. And there's some divers that are actually going down underwater to get some of this wreckage and bring it above water. I thought that would have been a perfect place to cameo Aquaman. Have him underwater, furious that humans are messing with alien technology. He didn't have to do anything. He could have just grimaced from underneath the water, And I thought that would have been a lot better of a tease than what we got later in the movie, where there was a video file on a computer and Aquaman just kind of stares at a cameraman underwater and eventually stabs him with his trident. I mean, I thought that was kind of just lame, to be honest. And it was a long pause of him stabbing. I don't know if they were trying to give people a chance to recognize who the character was or what exactly was going on there. Also, I didn't know Aquaman's eyes could light up in shadows, so that's interesting. If that's comic accurate, let me know in the comments below. But we also had a clip of Flash, 2 appearances of Flash actually. Early in the film, there's a pretty forgettable, pretty throwaway dream sequence. I know it's teasing Darkseid, but it doesn't mean anything to people who don't know about him, and the film never goes out of its way to explain what the heck we were seeing, so I really would have preferred if that scene was just completely thrown out of the movie, but it happened. But at the end of that Darkseid kind of preview sequence, there's a shot of Bruce Wayne seemingly waking up, and there's a tear in space and time. I can assume the film never labels it as such, where there's a guy in a red costume with some silver armor and a heavy 5 o'clock shadow who says to Batman that he's right about that guy. We don't know if he's talking about Superman or Lex, but it's presumed that this is Flash. This is the Ezra Miller Flash giving him a message from the future. Fast forward towards the end of the film, we get some security footage of a convenience store where there's a guy who looks a lot like a disheveled Skrillex trying to buy milk in a convenience store, and then the convenience store clerk actually is getting robbed. And we see this character move at superhuman speeds, still slower than the Grant Gustin Flash, I noticed, to save the convenience store clerk and then go back to where the milk was. I don't know that that was a great introduction for Flash, and frankly, this version of Barry, if that is what they're calling him, I believe, seems pretty homeless looking. I don't know. He's just not my picture of the Flash, and maybe I've been ruined by the CW show, but I think Grant Gustin's still in the win column here. But that was his kind of tease, and I didn't really care for that either. We then get a very sort of, I don't know, confusing, dark look at the creation of Cyborg. We get the actor who played Miles Dyson and Dr. Emil Hamilton on Smallville. I don't know if he was Hamilton again here. I missed that. I don't think he is, but he kind of just suddenly brings Cyborg to life when this cube suddenly shows up in his lab. No explanation there. I'm sure it's a comic book reference I've missed. I don't read a lot of DC comics, but at the same time, it was just kind of like, what was that? And if I had that much trouble being at least somewhat familiar with the DC universe, imagine what average moviegoers are thinking. So it just seemed shoehorned in, all these cameos. I don't know that we needed all of them. I didn't like the way they portrayed Flash. I didn't feel really, I guess, one way or another for Cyborg, but I do wish that if we were going to see Aquaman, it would have made a lot more sense for him to show up earlier when they're recovering wreckage from an ocean in the movie. I thought that would have been a lot cooler. Now, there's certainly some other points I could go into about this film, but I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about everything. Like I said, I've already told you, especially if you're a comic book fan, it's worth seeing this movie. There's some great imagery, some great references to the comics, and just from a general movie-going experience, I think this is a film that needs to be seen. But I have one final complaint about this movie, and it's something that just really bothers me given what we already know about future films. The end of this movie closes with the death of Superman. They fight Doomsday, just like we saw in the trailer. That was no big secret, and thanks to Warner Brothers for spoiling that. But at the end of this film, Superman, in an effort to kill Doomsday, ends up getting killed himself. And this film spends, I don't know, upwards of 10 minutes, and maybe not quite that long, but roughly 10 minutes, addressing the death of Superman, showing funerals, having people boo-hoo and cry. There's dramatic music playing at this point, and I feel like we're supposed to be sad that Superman just died, but this is the same problem you've heard me complain about with Star Trek 2 if you've been sticking with me for any amount of time. Star Trek Into Darkness, not the original Star Trek 2, but in Star Trek Into Darkness, they try to make you think that Captain Kirk died, which was a load of baloney when you're watching the film. Not for a second did I believe, in the second film in a trilogy, that they were going to kill off the main character, and the same thing is happening here. They try to make you think Superman's died, and I didn't buy it for a second. We already know that Henry Cavill's involved in the Justice League films that are about to start filming, and we know there's a Superman 2 slated further down the line, and you could argue, well, maybe the Superman 2 film is going to be the return of Superman. Even if that were the case, it doesn't explain his involvement with Justice League. All I'm saying is they tried to kill a major character. We aren't buying it because DC's just launching this universe, and I hate that they tried to throw that story element. And yes, I know it's from the comics, but I thought it was way too soon to do that Death of Superman story. We all know that after the events of Civil War, and no, it didn't happen during the main story like we see often cited online, Captain America actually dies in Cap 25, the first issue post-Civil War in his comic book, and it's a moment that we're waiting for, frankly, in the movies, and if it happens, we've had, 6, 7 films now of the Marvel Cinematic Universe where Captain America has been involved in some fashion. If Captain America dies. It's like the original Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, when Spock died. It's a death that's been earned. We've spent time with this character. We've grown to like this character. We believe in his ideals. He's a very human character, a very viewpoint character for anyone watching the movies, both in the case of Spock and with Chris Evans' Captain America. So if Captain America dies during Civil War, while it would be a bummer and we know it's not going to be permanent, it would hold some weight and some resonance with us because it is a character we spent so much time with. In the case with Batman v Superman, Superman dying just felt pointless. Why waste that storyline now? We know he's coming back. And I hate that they did that. And they did it in Star Trek II Into Darkness. No way did I believe Chris Pine Kirk was going to die in the second film in what was likely going to be a trilogy. So it just boggles my mind that Warner thought it was a great idea here. Now we've got baggage going to Justice League Part 1 of what happened to Superman, and they have to spend the first few minutes of the film establishing why he is or isn't alive. Not a great move when you're trying to rebuild your universe. And he's your major player. What were you thinking? Well, that's my thoughts on Batman v Superman, guys. There's more I could talk about, like the fact that Superman and Lois are in a relationship at the beginning of this movie, and we didn't see any sort of build up to that, and that's not where they left at the end of Man of Steel. And really, I'm just very overall mixed on this film. Definitely one you want to see, but I've been holding off on buying figures and toys for this movie until I had a chance to see it, and now that I've seen it, I'm not really compelled to spend any more money on merchandise for this film. I actually did a bit of a shopping spree after I saw this movie, so you'll see a haul video coming up with what I did pick up, but really, I'm glad I've seen the film, but I probably don't need to see it again. Will I buy it on home video? Maybe, but I'm definitely going to wait till it's on sale. So let me know in the comments below, guys, what you thought of the movie. Thanks for sticking with me as I shared my thoughts. Let me know what you think about the film. If I'm dead wrong, you tell me, and I'd love to see some examples of why you think so. If I'm right, feel free to agree with me and share some points that you thought were kind of a weak point of the film. But thanks for watching me this whole time, guys. If you want more videos from me, definitely subscribe. Like this video, guys, if you feel like I brought up some good points, or dislike it if you think I'm off my rocker. But be sure to stick around for that haul video. It'll probably be coming up in the next day or two, and I'll see you guys next time.